anymore.
That's right, true.
Do you know what I mean? Like whittling is like a true life skill.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to
Yeah.
Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
anybody here for public comment. If anybody shoots in, let me know. And we did not get the minutes out for our last meeting, so we're going to go ahead and table that. I haven't table this, do I? No. I don't think so. All right, so let's go ahead and table those till next time, guys. And we'll send out these minutes along with the last minutes. And we're going to jump right in. There's no public comment, so we're going to actually jump right in to summer recap.
I'm going to throw it down to David and Caroline to do.
So, quick summer recap, under 5 minutes. All in all, good summer. Summer camp was great. Caroline, well done with the camp your first year. It really was, honestly. I mean, I've been here 5 years. One of the best camps I've seen. Staff, very happy. I think Jen can attest for that. We had one intern this year, so it was a little difficult. Usually we have two. So a little short staff this year, but we made it work. Pool did okay. The weather definitely did not help this year with revenue. We were probably about a little over $12,000 short of sales as compared to last year. But we added more swim lessons, so it kind of made up for the difference there. But on those nice days, it was really busy, and people want more swim lessons. So, with the size of the pool, I don't know if we can really accommodate that, but we'll look at it some more. Trips continue to be very popular. What else did we have?
I feel like all of our trips sold out this summer.
Yeah.
That was like a bit the senior trip, so that was exciting.
That was awesome. I don't think there was a moment that we weren't running around like our head.
Yeah.
Specialty camps did very well. We had 2 STEM Lego type camps. That was very popular. We had a soccer camp that we partnered with Challenger Sports, and that did very well. Also, we had a walking group for older adults that is still moving forward through the fall, and they want to go through the winter. So, trying to hit all ages and interests as we should be.
Nice.
I was just going to say, I just want to put one plug like I always do at the end in our August-September meeting. I don't think we really realize what these guys do. These guys go from 3 with Nancy and 2, only 2,
Yeah.
to a staff of, I was calculating in my head, over 50 in the blink of an eye. And there's so much more to manage with the pool and the concessions and the camp on top of what they do every day. And I just don't think enough people realize the amount that goes into that. So I am always so happy to be a part of it, but always in awe in what these 3 get done. So I have to give my annual plug because it really is amazing to all of those staff levels.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's great, and we're lucky to have you.
Absolutely. And I got on the maintenance side, our maintenance guys are rock stars this year. We got 2 new ones, as you know, earlier this year. Jason was last year, Scott was this year. I mean, they saved a tremendous amount of money by painting the pool in-house. We are actually draining the pool as we speak, and we will be putting a second coat on this fall.
It looked great.
So it is. It really came out good, and they are already investigating some water leakage we have in the spray pad. When you tell them, hey, I think this leaks water, they're going to determine to find it. And they found some very spongy concrete in one of the drains already. So they're going to be chipping that out and replacing it with Sikaflex. And then they're going to have a camera and look at all the pipes and look for cracks, especially the drain. And we are going to look into the holding tank in the parking lot too as well. So we lose a lot of water in that feature. So this will hopefully be better off to balance it and keep it balanced and keep it running more efficiently.
And also to those 2 guys, there's 2 guys to do all the maintenance, all the mowing, all the things that, again, ramps up from spring to fall. And how we get it done with only 2 guys is, I don't.
And I can't imagine being short in the swimming pool. This is the rainiest winter
Yeah, it's
or summer ever.
It was tough. The weather wasn't as cooperative as last year, but the lifeguard staffs were great too.
staff
No
was
issues with the
wonderful
pool
down there.
really. And again, back to our park guys too. They come from an aquatics part of their background is aquatics, and they are incredible with the pump room and the spray pad. So
They're teaching us stuff about our equipment that we didn't even know. They're like, oh, this is how you do it. This is what you should do. And so they have some big ideas to better improve the facility. Their goal this fall is to repair the spray pad. There's one element that actually has been broken for a couple of years. So we may be saw cutting and repairing it, and then some big plans ahead to make it look a lot nicer and work a lot better.
awesome. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Hats off to you guys.
thank you.
All right. Any other discussion points? Any other pieces for summer recaps?
Did you want me to bring up the Little Adventure Camp?
You may, yeah.
So I saw there's like a gap with once kids leave teen camp and then can become a CIT. It's like a 1-year gap. And I had a lot of parents asking at the end of the summer if there was like a preschool camp or a kindergarten camp. So next year we're going to add Little Adventure Camp. So those former teen campers, before they can become summer adventure camp CITs, will work at Little Adventure Camp. It'll be like a half-day program with like a cap of 40 kids. We'll have like a director for that and all of that. So it'll be a nice half-day program, and then the like full-time counselors and coordinator for that program will join summer adventure camp in the afternoon, while our former teen campers can do whatever they want.
Just out of curiosity, what is that age gap that they would be before speaking?
So it's like they're going into their freshman year is their last year that they can do summer, be a teen camper.
Okay.
And then we don't hire until you're going into your junior year.
Okay.
So it's that like going into your sophomore year age.
Okay, thanks.
I worked at a camp that was called Teddy Bear Picnic. It was that age. I was 14, 15 when I got the job, and it was the perfect kind of half-day program. So I could still do sports. I could still hang out with my friends.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you for adding that. I think that'll be beneficial. So you said about 14, 15 age-wise?
Yeah, I think going into sophomore year.
Okay.
So they have a little bit of experience.
And that would be a good group if some of those teen campers come
Yeah,
back.
we've got some really good ones.
Oh yeah, they'd be great.
Yeah. And we want to keep them before they get another job elsewhere and make like $19 at Target.
Yeah, it's a great bridge.
Honestly,
Build those legacies up.
Yeah, for
Yes.
sure.
I think that's great. Thank you for pulling that together. 10 Hampton Road renovations, how are we doing on that, Greg?
It is now at a standstill, to be honest with you. We had a few things left over to do. DPW was a little short-staffed, and they were finishing them up. But there's a reason we paused it. We can go right to, we got the Community Center Investment Program grant.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that was, David did a great job. Corey Stevens, our finance director, really helped pull some numbers together. We actually have awarded design and engineering to JSA Design out of Portland.
We use them too.
Yeah, they're very good. And I mean, you talk about someone that knows accessibility. Todd, who is one of their managing principal owners, is in a wheelchair and speaks with an iPad. So he really is going to bring a new vision to looking at the building to make sure accessibility is there. We're just finishing up with the lawyer to get the contract all finalized. David got some good news. He was on a webinar August 17th while I was on vacation, and we don't need to start quote-unquote construction until the end of February 15th.
I think it was the 24th.
24th, yeah. So that gives us a little bit extra time, but the nice thing is demo is part of that process, and our guys written in the grant is we could start our demo. So January and February, our parks guys may be swinging some hammers so we can start the clock. We are actually having a hazard mitigation analysis done throughout the whole building starting tomorrow. We got to make sure there's no lead paint, asbestos, and all that. So when we get the demo plan, we can go and start just tearing things out and be ready for whoever gets awarded the contract to do the construction can come in, and it's going to be a clean slate, and they can hopefully move fairly quickly. So hopefully we have a design by the end of October, early November, so we can put an RFP out and with the goal of starting them and having that all start in February.
That's great. Were there any red flags when the property was transitioned over to the city that you know you're going to encounter with your environmental testing? Do you have...
No red flags. We had that done prior to purchasing it to make sure.
Yeah.
So we didn't do the building per se, but JSA is pretty confident that with the 1992 renovation and addition added onto it, a lot of those things were dealt with, especially the older part of the building. But again, if we're taking down molding or moving stuff, there could be layers and layers of paint that we are unaware of. So that's going to be just the factor to get it in there. It was a farm at one point and part of Churchill's originally, but they did an analysis and they're pretty confident there's nothing on site.
That's great.
Yeah.
There's also, just as a side point, through GSA, there's a woman named Ann Weidman, who you may have met.
Yeah.
She has organized access navigators in Portsmouth, and it's like a Facebook page and a group. So anytime there's a special event, access navigators make sure there's like a handicapped seating area. So let's say a parade.
Yeah.
And they will work with people who are planning it to say, hey, could we section off these spots? Could we add more handicapped spots just for these special events? It's not permanent parking per se, or how can we make sure that the community who needs extra mobility assistance can access these special events that we have in town? So while working with JSA, you'll probably become connected to her, and I could envision that to be a good, like if the surrounding Portsmouth area is utilizing access navigators, and could see Exeter being the next place to start saying, hey, and we've assigned XYZ extra handicap spots for the brew fest, or for this, Halloween event, or whatever. And it's pretty easy to organize that, but it can make a big impact, and especially some families who might say, I can never get down there because there's never any parking, or, oh, it's too bumpy, or whatever,
Yeah.
So that's just
I was fortunate enough, I met Ann, Todd, and Pam, who was one of their project managers when we went to purchase it, because I wanted to start vetting out different design and engineering firms. We had worked with BL companies, and unfortunately the time frame was so crunched that a lot of the big name firms already have work. So these two, we only got 2 bids. One was astronomically high in JSA. So that being said, it is great. The design is going to be energy efficient. We got the energy assessment back, so that's going to be incorporated in the design. It's going to be possibly a heat pump as the main heating source and cooling source, and all new insulation, yada, yada, you name it. Weatherization, as they call it, is going to be key. And then sealing everything up. The blower test was awful. You just want to get like 80. We got like a 40 in that building. So lots of gaps to fill in to make it truly energy efficient.
Was that test required for the funding?
No, but it was, Mike, it was kind of like one of the big, you got points for doing it. So,
I've been through a couple of those, and they're terrible.
Yeah.
This building would probably get a 20.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it was good though. And, it did in that winter, Molly. It did give us notification of things we really need to focus on. We knew the heating system was poor, seeing that most of the elements were from the 90s. So we knew half the building was in the 1800s. We knew there was gaps there. We know some windows were failing. So that's a good thing. So right now, most of the work for the first floor is done. That's the caveat, where we were this close, and then it was decided that it might not be best if we move yet and then have the renovation around us, because when David and I did the walkthrough with the architects and engineers, and they all gasped when we said, yeah, we're going to move. And they're like, you're going to move in the middle of construction? Why don't you just wait? Are you being evicted from your? And I'm like, no. And so I think we're on the same page, but it was so close. We were so close. But our goal is try to get it done quickly as possible, as efficient as possible, and make sure we can get in there and utilize it next summer for 2024.
Are you at liberty to tell us your grant award?
Yes, we got the full grant of $996,000. That was $855 of that was our match, which pretty much about $87,000 so far has been spent out of our match. That will be design engineering. Mike, $85,000 for design engineering. We're excited about that.
That's what a job you guys did.
Yeah. The other bid was $175,000 for design and engineering, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah. Big difference.
Is there going to be mechanical design as part of that?
Yep.
For that number, that's a bargain.
Yeah. Mechanical, structural, electrical, plumbing.
Wow. No.
Yeah. So everything. The only thing we will have, we are waiting on estimates on cost estimator, because we kind of want that before we go out to bid, so we know where our budget numbers. So we have approximately $841,000 to go into the actual structure itself.
That's fantastic.
Amazing. Good job, you guys.
Unreal.
And I'm going to give them more kudos too, because I happen to know how intensive this grant process was, because I wasn't ready to apply for it. These guys jumped on it. They got ready. They got their numbers ready. It was meeting after meeting. This is a really big coup, and good job for doing it, because applying for grants isn't easy, and this grant required a certain level of readiness, and so they made it ready. They were ready.
And out of the 11 projects that were awarded, they highlighted Exeter #1. Because there's
Because we're number one.
You're so great. Good job, you guys. That's a big
Great job.
Thank you. On top of camp and on top of running. Yeah. Thank you. This was a big deal. Really, really big deal.
Great job.
For the town, for us. Thank you, guys. Anything more you wanted to add on the community center investment grant? No. Dave, anything you want to add?
No, Greg covered it.
Awesome. So we're going to move down to discussion items. This one's going to have quite a bit of discussion tonight. Greg's going to kind of run us through field rental usage rate proposals. It's been 20 years since Parks and Rec has reassessed their field rates, and looking at surrounding towns and other communities, we are way behind the mark. And because of that, we've had an influx of teams, organizations that are coming to use Exeter because we're cheap. But when we look at it across the board, we end up losing money because the wear and tear on the fields, the wear and tear on the entire Parks and Rec system is really taking a toll. So I'm going to let Greg jump in and talk a little bit about what has been going on, and then what we are hoped to do, our charge as thank you. And I'm going to just hand it over to you all.
Yeah, Stephanie nailed it on the head. It's been 20 years, over 20 years. In my 20 years here, the fees have been the same. And if we think back to 2003, things cost a little bit cheaper. So, we had an influx and it's a great thing to have lots of activity up at the rec park. It is the hub to go to for everyone. They know it. They want to come here. We have softball, adult softball, soccer, pickleball, tennis. I mean, that's the go-to for everything. And especially when you're trying to juggle softball and soccer, it's becoming very unmanageable to the point where we have to really, as a board, look at it where should the maintenance of the rec park fall back onto the taxpayers? and how do we do that where we don't want to exclude anyone. So I sent out a packet earlier last week, and Brendan sent it to me, with a number of different field use policies and procedures. And this is an opening discussion to talk about how we can reshape it and come up with a comprehensive policy for us to present to the select board for them to approve it, because they are the ones that set the fees overall. And it's a great thing to do, but at the same time, how do we get there? And that's where I need you guys to put your thinking caps on. One of the things that I really like to point out is some of these policies are very detailed, and some of these policies are not very detailed. I.e., if you look at Northampton's, it's literally a one-pager, and this is it. No like policy procedures. Portsmouth's is great. It has very detailed of what they do for rentals. The city of Keene, to me, really jumps out as being one of the better ones. It really goes into detail, and I can tell you this because I'm friends with Andy, the director there. He borrowed this from Virginia Beach. So in the Parks and Rec, we like to borrow things. So how can we tailor it? And one of the discussions we're initially looking at is for those that do have to pay fees, the fee does have to go up. Right now it is $25 for 2 hours. And you can't buy a pair of cleats for $25,
Yeah,
let alone.
just so you know, a lot of the fields in the area are $75 an hour is the going average for the fields. So
Yeah, and I mean, with the number of groups wanting to do tournaments as well, it's also an opportunity for us, because Jen can attest, when we have tournaments, it does tax our parking area tremendously. So coming up with a policy to proper tournaments as well. And then it just comes down to, and this is where I have discussion points, a lot of these groups are now having a lot of influx of non-residents. And if there's a lot of non-residents feeding into these leagues, I mean, it's putting a burden on Exeter, and Exeter is the place they want to be. So how do we balance that without putting the burden on you taxpayers? And then, because field maintenance is critical. This spring, we spent about $20,000 to remove the lips on all of the softball fields, because they had, over time, not been my guys have maintained them, but it's teaching those that use the fields how to properly maintain. Dan, you've done a lot of work with it. Yeah, it's hard because
you can't do it. You can't be there all the time. And you trust people to use it responsibly, but they pack up and they go, and then the next guy comes on, and you're like,
Especially a season of rain like this.
oh, exactly.
it's been crazy.
And the turf that you had to use, and that's just...
And one of the biggest issues, people don't want to hand rake around the perimeter. They just drag the entire thing, and that's where we had so much of the chopping up.
That's why it pushes everything out and migrates everything, especially a skin infield like that.
Yeah.
And then, so mandatory training for all user groups. This is all discussion items. And then how do we do, I don't, in-town leagues are important for the vibrancy of any youth sports. I'm 100%, but if there's a majority, if not a majority of them are Exeter residents using Exeter town fields, then how do we, because I don't want to make it unaffordable for them to be able to participate as well, because that's, again, I love what youth baseball does with all, like, whoever runs your social media is outstanding. And so, and how do we get there? And then how do we all share the cost? Because honestly, our youth sports for baseball, we use Gilman with Exeter Youth Baseball. We don't use any other field. So it's all the local leagues or another group coming in that use it, except for our adult softball. We do use those. And then we have fields that, like Park Street, it's not the greatest field. We know that. It's on the list of things that needs to be improved. but we can never improve it unless we bring in fees, and it's a never ending, and this has been my tirade for the last 5 years, and Molly has heard me, like, the parks are in a bad shape, and how do we invest in them without overburdening our staff? And then it goes back to Jen's point, we have 2 guys. Yeah. And we use a lot of contracted services for mowing, but one of the things is they're a contractor. So what does a guy do from when he mows your lawn? He mows, he weed whacks, he leaves. He's not gonna say, oh, well, I saw water puddling around your foundation. It's not my problem. So, like, how do we go in that aspect? So, and then the debate is private league versus non-private league. Where's the fine line? Because I know some of these, and my full transparency, my daughter is now in a youth softball nut. I never understood the intensity of youth softball, especially in the summertime, and the travel, like, and how high stakes it is, and traveling hours upon hours to go to tournaments in New York and Pennsylvania, and I'm like, my wallet is hurting just thinking about this. So, yeah. And then coming up with the priority list, again, I'm going to harken back to Keene, because Keene nailed it. Parks and Rec, in-town leagues, school, private, and then traditional sports, I didn't frame it right. Recreation, park, seasonal priorities. The great thing we had is youth softball has exploded in the Seacoast. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I was in Parks and Rec here, there was barely 2 teams. And now there's almost 30 or something like that. So that's a great thing where women's, girls youth softball's coming back. So they had more of a priority in the spring, and I totally get that, and soccer understood that, where in the fall, soccer's gonna get the priority, and we just got the numbers back from EYSA, and they have 29 teams. In Caroline, how many teams do we have?
Everything's full. I had to increase the capacity like 6 times.
That's great.
Yeah.
'Cause we were low the last few years.
So, I mean, our soccer numbers are exploding.
Good.
So, if anyone says that no one's participating in youth sports anymore, they got to come to Exeter and see exactly like how much we have. And it's a testament to the parents who put them in there, but also the kids wanting to play and developing that love of the game. Because I see all of our older kids, and now I've been here long enough where I see kids that grew up in the program. God, one of them plays in the NFL. So let's just, that's how.
Can I ask a question about the cadence of what you would like? Are you looking for input tonight so that we can have a discussion? You can bring back a proposal to this board?
First, yes.
And then we'll go to the select board, and then we'll deal with it for budget?
Yes.
So we know, okay.
Yeah. Hopefully my timeline, Molly, would be
I was going to ask.
some discussion tonight. Dave, Caroline, and I sit down, we develop a policy, we come back in, you look at it, you may tweak it a little bit, and then come to you eventually in October, November to institute it for the 2024 season.
Okay.
It's the year. So we got time, but time will slip by fast.
I know, it goes real fast.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
So why don't we open up for discussion? Do you want to start to go down the list of categories of what we're looking at so we don't get off on too much of a tangent, and start to discuss our thoughts on resident versus non-resident versus percentage of teams, et cetera?
I think that's the number one nut right there is resident versus non-resident. How do we differentiate between them, and how is it? And I don't know the answer. That's why I'm looking for input.
Do you need it to be resident versus non-resident for, there's a resident, like a birthday party, renting the field, resident, non-resident, right? Then there's a league.
Right. It has a lot of non-residents in it.
Using the field. But Keene, you're right, does it well, where is it city-sponsored or is it not city-sponsored? So it's not worrying about residency so much as your non-city sponsored.
But if you read down further, they ask for the non-city sponsored. If the in-town league does not have 80% of residents, they're to pay an additional fee to supplement field maintenance.
I think is fair. I really do think is fair, because there are a number of other surrounding towns, and we had some situations where people called over to the rec because of conflicting dates and things of that nature for practice times where they wanted to come and they wanted to play for Exeter. We also had some people that wanted to play for Exeter because they wanted to play for Exeter. And, we did allow them after speaking to their rec directors, and they always sign off on it too. So we have, over the years, because the program has become so robust, and you guys have done such a great job with it, that people do want to come play here because it's a great program. So we're finding that, our teams are heavily weighted in both directions as well. So
like Exeter sponsored rec soccer.
yes.
Could we clarify what that exactly means? Like, I'm thinking like EJBL.
Yeah.
That's not put on by Park and Rec. That's not town. It's just Exeter in name. Would that be a non-city sponsored? I'm just trying to get
Yes.
some
Right.
understanding.
Yeah.
So like Exeter FCX, help me out, I don't have soccer players.
Yes, it's nonsense.
That's non-city
Correct.
sponsored. So when we say city sponsored, we think
Parks
we're
and Rec.
registering through Greg.
Yeah.
Correct.
Is that correct? Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, is baseball different because like EJBSL is like a rec league, even though it's not?
So
Because
that's
we don't have a competing league?
part of the discussion that we were
Yeah.
having was that EJBSL collectively between baseball and softball, the season itself is considered to be a town league.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the extensions where the end of the season ends, playoffs happen, and the end of the season ends, and then other teams have said, well, we have these three other teams, but they're part of the organization too, so we want free fields. And in the meantime, we had some pretty serious chew up of the fields, number one, but more importantly, fields that could have otherwise been rented out and given us some revenue with
Are you
teams
talking about like
outside
all-star
of-
teams? What do you mean from teams?
Yeah. Travel also.
Travels.
Yeah, like tournament teams.
Yeah, tournament teams.
So from out of EJBL?
Out of softball, yeah.
EJBSL.
Softball has
Out of softball.
3 or
Okay.
4
So
tournament teams.
does Exeter Rec take registrations for those players?
No.
They do not.
And you still consider that Exeter city-sponsored rec league?
This year they were. However, when we look at the percentages of
I don't,
players.
if you're not taking registration, I don't think it's a city-sponsored.
So in the past, like SAU 16 softball has gotten the fields for free because they have contributed quite a bit of money. But so has Exeter Youth Soccer,
So is the adult league.
and so is the
Softball.
Yeah, I mean,
but adult league is ours.
I don't mind, like, if you want to wave your magic wand and not charge someone because you feel there's a quid pro quo in terms of maintenance of fields, I think that that's going to be your prerogative on a case-by-case basis based on anything. But I think a first step would be to define who's who. Like, what are we talking about for terms?
Correct.
To determine who is, I'm sorry, I'm using the Keene
Yes,
as like an
19.
example, like
Yeah.
who's city sponsored, so who are we talking about?
What page is that on for Keys?
It's very,
I see it.
yeah, and so like,
The tier of services.
yeah, so, who's city sponsored, who's non-city sponsored? I think that would be helpful to take the baby step towards who's our low-hanging fruit that you every year, Greg, you know in your mind, okay, before I schedule one field space, I gotta save room for baseball, soccer, softball, like, are those city sponsored? Are they non-city sponsored?
So it's simple as that. Town sponsored is our programs.
I was going to say, I would think it's pretty simple.
And then,
Register
and you
through
can
the rec.
always say there's a relationship with one of these organizations, and so while these are our stated fees, we get that fee in field maintenance, in volunteer support, in whatever. I mean, they donate a shed, they fixed a dugout, like you could make that call. But I think it's important to have, if that support in that capacity were to stop, you could go back to the monetary relationship by saying, and you could also then say, hey, this is how much, like you might want to apply for a grant, and you could say, this is how much field space you're using, and now you have a dollar sum to attach to that. If a sponsor wanted to say, hey, how much would it cost cost to pay for your field bill.
Right.
You know,
So we got to keep in mind that everything that's been contributed to the town is a donation.
It's not a
a
buyout.
guarantee of facilities in the future. And especially when you look at the rec park, where it's Land and Water Conservation Fund, Eric filled on that the state will say, ultimately, it is the towns and actually the National Park Service. So granted, we can't turn people away. It has to be open to the public. But they need to realize that just because they've contributed expanding soccer fields or redoing a baseball field doesn't mean they own it.
oh, of course not, of course not. But I mean, and you could certainly,
But that's what you're saying, that allows for that sort of quid pro quo.
yeah,
Then we
and
have
that's
some
on a
issues with
case-by-case basis, I know.
That's where we're trying to step, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like if we are going to develop terms and service and new rates and who is a city sponsor, who is a not city sponsor, I think you have to step away from that whatever we're calling it. Because I think that that's gonna put these guys in a sticky situation.
Already
They're like, yeah, but they just gave us a new shed, so what? And then it's gonna be like, oh, so I just think that that's going to put Greg and the rec department in a situation that's going to could potentially look non-transparent and ugly.
I agree.
No, I get it. And I'm not saying like put that in the policy. I'm saying that
I think it's just too small of a town
worse if it's
to have.
not in the policy and it's.
We had some issues this year that created some issues that had to go extremely high up and took an awful lot of manpower to diffuse some situations that would have been non-issues if we were black
so
and
you
white.
need a woman in the scenario.
Well, we had women in the scenario, and that didn't help.
So I suppose it would be like, as you said, defining the tier delineation. So you could always add an additional tier.
Oh, absolutely.
Using kind of the keen system that they have here, which is pretty, unless it becomes overly complex. And then it would be kind of the differential between the fees that they're probably getting a steep discount versus non-residents.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like they have here about 80% proof, and I'm curious as to does that mean they're photocopying IDs or giving you?
Sawyer Park does.
Yeah.
Like when we for baseball, you have to have a certain amount of Kensington residents on the team in order for them to waive the fee for that team to play that night.
Wow.
I find that to be a layer of, not for you guys, but for Greg.
It's a lot.
I find that a layer
such
of
a
like,
pain.
Oh, it is.
for you to have to require that as part of like your fee structure, I
Up
feel
front.
is a complicated.
Well, then you're drafting a team and you're thinking, I can take this other Kensington kid on my team and then we get to use Sawyer Park for free. That should be a determining factor.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. I agree.
Interesting.
I would like to say from Exeter Junior Baseball and Softball League, we've had some very loud complaints from softball who is all of a sudden became more involved in our sport about not using the rec park. And I don't really know the nuts and bolts of
About you not using the rec park?
about softball.
They got the rec fields at no charge this season for not only their recreation team, but also their extended teams.
So that's good information because I didn't know. That's why I
It is
bring
very
it up.
good information.
And I would just throw out there that I would like to see, if that's the case, we should be paying and we should be helping maintain the fields.
Correct.
And I would love to see EJBSL be more active in those fields.
Right. Like we are on the baseball side with all the
Because
baseball
I think
fields.
Dan and I both are kind of blind to that.
Yeah.
We hear about it in our board meetings. We have not had softball active in our board. I've been 10 years. And they, the last 5
Very
meetings?
separate.
Yeah, like half a year,
Yeah.
which has been great.
And they've been very active now. And I've bit my tongue and not brought it up to this board, but I'm bringing it up
Well, I'm
tonight.
glad you are, because it's part of it, and I think that if you ever need to bring Dave or Greg or anybody in to sit in on those meetings to fact check them, because I know that there has been a lot of
I can do that.
information. Yeah, we know you can.
That's why I'm bringing it
So
up. Yeah.
we appreciate that, because that's part of what we're trying to do is be real transparent on these.
But that's good feedback because
Now, I will tell you that And I'll be completely transparent too. We were a travel team that paid to use the fields, and we paid for the season what we were asked to pay. And we spent an awful lot of time doing field cleanup, field maintenance, putting down, trying to dry them up, trying to get them as even as we could. So it would be great to see the teams that are coming in that are using them, that aren't paid teams to jump into. We'd love to have a maintenance
That's good
team like you
feedback that
guys.
Dan and I will bring back to a meeting that will happen next week.
But I think that would be a setting expectation.
Absolutely.
Maybe those teams coming in weren't, and I don't know what it was there an expectation that, you have to do X, Y, and Z for field maintenance? Is that part of the sort of contract when?
Yeah, and
Read
you're
through the
right.
key one, it literally goes.
It does need to map it out. It's one of those things where it's a culture thing, but you can't expect everyone to know
Right,
it.
but if
you're
it's
absolutely
not a
right.
set
Now it's mapped
expectation,
out.
they might be like, oh, they have their own people that come in and
Absolutely.
do this, and so we come in, we play, and we make
Right, because every town does do it differently.
Right.
And there are different expectations in different towns.
And
And
that's
if you
what
are
I'm
a travel
like,
team,
Kristen.
you're going to other, you're going around to others.
So would it be fair to me to bring back to our board next week, nothing binding, but we should be more involved in field maintenance as a softball league? If we
Yeah.
use the fields?
And the one complaint we heard, and unfortunately the rain did not help, is the fields did not drain well. Well, the fields in general at the rec park do not drain well. We know that.
Yeah.
The infields were, yes, we re-groomed them and laser leveled them, but it was a unusually amount of water.
Yeah.
I can tell you, you walk on those fields today, they're hard as a rock.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Come to Courier at home plate after a rainstorm.
yeah, and it's trying to understand that, like, I don't want to turn people away, but when it comes to field condition and the one prized possession we have for athletic fields, we have to. But there's some times when I can tell you our adult softball played on it and said the fields were fine, when I heard no, they weren't fine. We didn't play on them because they were too wet. And adult softball was like, they played well.
They like the muddy.
Yeah. Well, no,
But
they
that's the
said
fields
they
don't
were.
like
They
muddy.
said they weren't muddy. So it's interesting. It's a dynamic that, and I walk the fields all the time. I have an extra pair of shoes in my car for that one reason, because my feet will get soaked.
But I like that you brought up the mandatory training for field use. So if you are an organization that's going to be using it, making sure that at least the board or someone from the board comes, gets the understanding and puts it in their, league rules as to what the expectations are, because you're absolutely right, where most people that have played before understand kind of common courtesy, but that's not an expectation that's been set. So we really
Right.
do need to set.
And you're not training every coach. You're doing you're training their fields and facilities guy.
Right, and they're training the coaches.
And then that's that person's responsibility to then turnkey it to them.
And I'm actually thinking of working with Bob Glowacki in developing a video that we can put on there. Proper field maintenance of the recreation park. Or of this
I would
park.
love to be a part of that.
You're going to be the star of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm going to be the star.
I mean,
By the tractor, though.
It could be your
one of the things my staff is actually participating in over the winter is Beacon in Athletics actually has a infield university you can go to.
Yeah.
Like it's literally online videos of how to properly maintain infields.
They're a great
Yeah.
resource.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So they're going to be doing that, completing the whole course, so
That's a
that
good
way
idea.
they're a little more. But please,
Is that a free course or?
it is free, and
That's pretty cool.
I'm going to just open the dialogue, if that's okay.
Yes.
At our next board meeting for softball, that I hear one side of it, and now I've heard another side, and, let's team up and,
And they're always welcome to come for a public comment. We'd love to have them come and,
well, we're glad to have them at our meetings now,
right.
because we've been insuring them, paying for their charter, footing all their bills,
It's a big
and not seeing
organization.
them.
It's grown to 17 different towns.
Can we
in
stay on
league
that?
now.
Yeah.
You guys talk about that after?
yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Why don't we go back to the fees? I think we need to discuss what we need on.
So Greg, I feel like there's almost like a tier.
Yep.
Like we would need to
Tier one
define the
Parks and Rec.
tiers,
Yeah.
and then the fees,
Yeah.
And then what is the current process for, fees are one thing, but, you know, city sponsored, non-city sponsored, we walk in at the same time. Is there priority? Is it first come, first served?
Well, that's where the tiers come in.
Why don't we set tiers first, and then we can prioritize under the tiers what goes under.
I think
tiers, and then we should be able to break
fairly
it down.
simple. Parks and Rec's tier 1.
Yeah.
EJBSL tier 2. EYSA's tier 2.
What's FC Exeter? Is that
That's
EYSA?
yeah.
Yeah. So that's like
Where would you put the school?
That's a question I have on that, because the school league this past year has put the 2 travel teams, and I say travel teams not loosely, it's on their websites as travel, it's on their Facebook page as travel. They've lumped them under SAU 16.
She's meaning literally the middle school and the high school, which they unlike Portsmouth, they don't come to us. 'Cause Rusty and them, they have their own facilities
fields
and
and
their own
facilities.
grounds guys. So
Okay.
even though, and that's where, going back to the old field use policy, it lists schools, but again, that was developed before even the new high school was built. So you're talking everyone was going after Linden
If
Street.
anything, it's Egypt Babe Ruth going to the schools, right?
Yeah.
Correct, yeah, and they've been great when we've had pickles. They've been Rusty's actually been great at helping us out when we've needed fields. They've been great to work with.
So I think, and then tier 3 would be
So-
anyone else besides, like a Seacoast United.
Like a for-profit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Challenger Sports.
Challengers.
Seacoast.
If Challenger Sports is our typical program, we only run a 1-week summer camp.
We
So
need
it's
to
essentially
identify this as regular season.
regular season.
I don't know that we need to make that distinction.
I think we do, because the 2 teams that have gone
Yeah, but if you look at the tryouts, the fees, the travel associated with it, those are
Field use is field use, regardless of what it's for.
right. But I'm saying the distinction between like an extended season all-star team that's coming from that league, because they're not rechartering, they're still that league, versus I'm playing for a for-profit private baseball.
So
No, I'm
Those are 2 different tiers.
differentiation on here. because
Extreme and
that's-
Riptide are not the same.
They're under
as Rip
SAU
City.
16.
Right.
They're not SAU 16. They are on their website as well as their Facebook page as travel teams.
Well, they are
Take
travel
their
teams.
registrations. If the school doesn't take their registrations, they are not a school team.
I agree with that. But they're under EJBSL, and the expectation has been that they will have free fields all the way to the
Yeah, I don't
end
think-
of their seasons.
They're not under that first tier.
That's what I'm saying, is we need to bump them down to, because we have Parks and Rec at tier 1.
Right.
We've got tier 2 EYSA, EJBSL in season.
I
Tier
disagree
3
with that.
has to bop down with the extension teams.
I disagree with that.
So you think that the extension team should be not paid
These are
to
the,
use
these are
the
the
fields?
nuts
No, I think they're
bolts
still
we're gonna
paying.
Yeah.
work through.
That's the difference in the tiers, is going to be a difference in cost.
Right, they're not paying the same as a for-profit private league. When I'm playing like NEB, which is like I'm paying this exorbitant fee to play, and there's dozens of them around here. That's not the same thing as Extreme and Riptide.
Right, but do you feel that they should be playing for free where they do have?
I don't think anyone should be.
I
don't think they're that elite
tiers,
level.
because
I
we're going to
understand
be
that.
pricing in the tiers.
Right. So they're tier 2.
Now, I will tell you that the tournaments that we played this summer at a travel, those teams were in those tournaments.
There's also
But usually in different
potential for a
divisions,
tournament fee.
and they're not competing with Rip City. They're not competing with Pirates. They're not
They
competing.
absolutely did compete with.
Could I ask a question? Just a clarifying question. So
You're talking baseball.
Extreme is
Baseball.
under EJBL. Does Extreme have cutoffs, tryouts, things of that nature?
Yeah.
Whereas other EJBL teams,
just
like
Riptide.
everyone gets to play. Is there a difference there? Is that correct?
I think the difference
Because-
is 503C versus a you pay to play.
Yeah.
So someone had mentioned like we could always add a tier, which I agree with because, and that was the first thing I thought of when you guys were like, well, there's like all-star teams under these like EJBLs and things like that. So
Right.
that gets tricky because now you're an all-star team. There's tryouts. There's
Right.
this and that. You're playing for a regional championship and things like
Right.
that. So again, Keene does a very good job, I think, at
And that's where in tier 3,
defining
even theirs is
those tiers
include
and
leagues offering above recreation level serving an area larger than one town for state, regional, national, or world championships. Also include individual independence teams. Examples, team leagues formed based on skill level and not all players can participate. All-star teams, programs, travel, AAU, select, independent, blah, 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 blah.
And to David's point, I think differentiating there where it's like a fourth tier, because the reason that those leagues exist are because they're affordable travel competitive leagues, and they do not become affordable if they're paying the same fee that Seacoast United and NEB and
And this is why we're doing this discussion.
Yeah. So I don't think we have to figure it out tonight.
No,
right.
This is a bullet point for Greg and David and Caroline to take back and be like, we need to get into the nuts and bolts of that.
Yep, I would almost think you want to get a list of teams that currently rent the fields or potentially would, and then find out differentiating factors to put them in categories, whether it's travel, pay for play, or whatever.
That's a good idea,
And
yeah.
then come up.
And I
I would
agree.
almost argue, while Keene does a great job, the tier 2 is a little bit vague in terms of the requirements. So if you're gonna, because if you're filling out the application, you're checking a box versus providing some sort of backup.
Well,
It's like, this is
on page 4 is how they differentiate tier 1 and tier 2.
Yeah, they're pretty nice.
Those don't decide it, right?
But I think I like the idea of having a list because there's a mental list in Greg's head.
Yeah.
Right.
And Dan, I'm in agreement too that, the spin-off leagues absolutely should have a lower fee than those that are coming to use fields that are coming from an organization that is a pay-for-play organization.
Or they cannot just blanket say, we want all of these fields when
All the time.
in all facts, they're not using all of them. So even if I wanted to generate revenue with someone that would be willing to pay more money, I can't because they've already
Locked off that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to have to come down to, I think the scheduling was so tough because rather than you guys putting slots together this year, you had groups come to you and say, this is what we want. And it was kind of locked in on schedule. So having you guys have an opportunity.
Can you explain now what is the process for booking a field? It sounds like the softball is the most contentious right now.
Yep.
So what is the process for?
They submit an application.
Okay.
We review it and then we will put it in our, we're now using, for transparency, our new rec desk software. We can put everything online so someone can go online and see what fields are available and what fields are not available.
That's awesome.
And who's actually renting them.
How far in advance can you secure that?
Per we'd like to do similar to the select board where any town facility can be booked 11 months prior to the start of said thing. For instance, we have it for town hall. A group comes in, wants to rent town hall. The month after town hall, after their event, they can put in an application for the 2024.
I will say, it's a brave approach because that can get tricky because then this is what's going to happen is someone's going to be really a strategist with scheduling and they're going to monopolize all your fields.
Which is what happened.
Well, if you block out regular season.
Versus Greg saying, all my spring sports, as of February 1st, I know the priority because we have this tiered system. So I know, so as of February 1st, I start entering the spring schedule based on our tiers. And you will get what you get based on availability and based on this tiered system. And I know that might not be as transparent, but I think there's the possibility of outside leagues being really smart about their scheduling and getting a ton of space.
The outside league that was in this year is pulling out this year, which is unfortunate, but there was pushback. I'll say it outright. I made sure that we pulled out and we're not part of using the fields this year because of the issues that it caused. And regardless of paying the fees and having them there.
But that's regular season.
Correct.
Summertime, I had a lot of other outside
Correct.
groups that wanted to use it, but it had been blanket reserved.
It wasn't being used.
So also, I mean, these are fine points, right? So you obviously are going to come up with a policy and we can get into those. But I think you should have like a deadline of what all spring needs to be to me by a certain date, and that's priority. Or if you prefer to have people just enter it the way City Hall does it, that's, you know, I mean, like, you can decide that.
Or they can enter it with you overseeing it potentially, and if you see
Or
someone that might be
they have to get approval,
overloading.
right? Like you,
Right.
does it go to you in rec desk to, then you click approve?
No, it would come to me and then I'd give it to my office manager and she'd put it in the rec desk. Once it-
No, I meant right now, if they have the ability to.
No,
put it online
we
themselves.
even though we have the ability to do it, Bryn, we decided no.
Oh, no, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, doing online reservations are
No.
for field usage is absolutely nightmare waiting to happen.
100%.
And for anything, like for instance, the three of us debated kayak rentals for one. But there's so much paperwork that goes into it. We're like, no, you need to come in and actually fill out the waiver. Caroline developed a great, like, here's a title chart, here's safety tips, this and this and this and this. So, I mean, we don't want that. And especially Nancy, my office manager, we could have done it for town hall and everything, but we're like, it's too big of a nightmare because we need certificates of insurance.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
need, if they need a police detail, this is what's going to need to be done. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. That's why we're like, no, let's not do online. We can do it, but at least transparency-wise, we can put it on the calendar and someone can see, hey, I know that field 1 is available on Mondays in July. Can I reserve it? So, I mean, breaking it down further, but I mean, going through, I mean, the next point, it breaks down eligibility requirements on tier 1, tier 2. I mean, we could go as far into details as we want. That's on page 4. And then on page 5 is how they actually,
The allocation process, to Bryn's point, is so someone doesn't monopolize it. There's a cutoff date, and once we have all those, then it's us reviewing them.
Yeah.
And again,
Putting them
looking at
in
their
this sort of tier
allocation.
order.
Yeah.
so for spring, it's February 1st. Summer, it's May 1st.
Yeah.
Fall,
Makes sense.
June.
So it would be get your stuff in for spring by February 1st, we'll review it. If you come to us on February 2nd, we might have already reviewed everything and you can
I'm
have
not
it.
that efficient.
I'm just saying, but by the letter, I mean,
Yeah.
it gives a deadline.
And then fields are allocated in a fair and equitable manner in the best interest of the city, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's why I think Andy, well.
It makes sense.
Yeah, Virginia Beach nailed it. That's
Yeah.
Who does the field prep?
it's fallen, and that's where this needs to be like, my two guys can't. We have a nice groomer, and we groom twice a week. But the rest of it is really, and if
What
it's
about
something.
lining out, who lines out all those soccer fields for like the weekend? Like
So
SCS?
that is a private contractor that does that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, 'cause that's phenomenal.
And
They do really nice.
and
Expensive.
And expensive.
And expensive.
But I mean, it has to be done. You
Yep.
gotta fit 7 fields in there or whatever.
Oh, yeah, yes, there is such fields, yeah. And I mean, even in softball, he has to come, he does it for us to do our adult softball because we need an arch, we need a 200-foot arch, so, because it's a co-ed league, we need foul lines. So he maintains that as well. So, and there's also, there's something else on the third baseline, I forget what it is.
Where does that expense?
That comes out of ours, because it's our program, it's for adult softball. But chalking, we don't chalk, we just groom it as much as we can, but really it ultimately comes down to someone showing up beforehand, dragging the field, lining the field, doing all the prep themselves, knowing that it's their responsibility to do it. And that will be outlined further, I believe, in this as well.
And down at the rec fields too, now the tractor's down there as well, you can attach the dragger to it, it makes it a lot easier, but we do need people to be dragging the sides.
Yeah, and well, the hard part is that is going to ebb and flow with the quality of your volunteers in these leagues. So some years you have excellent people doing an excellent job who really have the time and attention to detail and know what they're doing. And other years it's somebody who fell into the position of having to do this, and now it's like, I don't know,
Yeah, even having somebody just drag those fields too does make a significant difference, because we did go from day to day where sometimes you'd get there and you knew the fields just weren't dragged at all. You got there and it was like pebbles on the entire thing. It was actually dangerous a lot of days. So I think that's a pretty simple expectation. I think that if it's set out there for people to just at least drag them, get your team out there all at once with bull rake and do it. That doesn't take a whole lot of time when you get a group in there.
But if that's in the application and that's passed along to the league presidents and that trickles down through there.
And that's it, because you guys send out great emails and information and communicate really well with your coaches and letting them know that we appreciate all that you do, even explaining to them that, reminding people that there are other teams that come on to use it afterwards. It can become a really dangerous situation.
And we do have enough resources up there to, especially for the rec park, to maintain it. Like when the fields get hard, if we go for extended, we have a fire hose that my guys go out there, and it's fun.
It's legit.
And it literally will soften the fields, and then you can drag them properly, and now they're ready to go. And also in between games, let's say there's a tournament and you want to cut down on dust, there's a reason why it's the same material that's used at Fenway Park. The reason why they go out every 3 innings is to keep it soft and keep the dust down.
Yeah, we used the hose one day for the fields, and it's unbelievable and it's fast.
Again, that goes back to proper training of everyone, and then having a video and showing this is what you need to do, and goes back to the point, 2 guys for 56 acres, that's including maintaining the pool and other.
Yeah, I mean, the expectation definitely isn't for someone to completely groom everything, but just to leave it respectable.
So we like the idea of tiers with possibly a 4th tier, right? You guys can figure that out. And then what are we thinking for fees for those tiers? Is that the next bullet point?
And I'm open to it. I think
Parks and Rec would be free, correct?
Yeah.
I see you have a 1.5 hour mark. Is that the $75 would be for 1.5 hours?
Correct, and that I think would be for the tier 4, and then we can ratchet it down for the others.
That's about right.
Because
I say $75 an hour is for 1 hour. Why 1.5?
That's how their umpires work.
Yeah,
the
umpires work on 90-minute shifts usually.
So if you look at page 6,
we don't. That's why I'm asking.
it has it where it's like 11 years old and up, skilled enhancement. It's 1.5 hours per day, 3 times a week, and no more than 4.5 hours.
Interesting. So as opposed to doing it per hour, you would have to rent 2 blocks for 2 hours and then pay the bigger fee, but not maybe use all that time if the game time is 90.
And this is why we're discussing this, because it's if you guys feel like...
Wouldn't it just be $50 an hour, and then the half hour is $25 to make the 75?
Yeah.
So then we can charge by the hour or by the hour and a half.
Yeah.
I think if that's in line with what other towns around here are charging, it's fine.
I will say we charge $75 an hour.
Yeah.
Not 1.5 hours, it's 75 an hour.
Yeah, I know Northampton's
But that's a turf field.
Yeah.
True.
So I don't know if that factors into it versus a grass field.
Plus
I don't think
maintenance.
everything else. I'm trying to think of the other towns around where
Charge you more for the
Barrington's actually more than that.
Barrington, Brentwood's more than that.
Yeah, Brentwood was.
PFAS.
I thought Brentwood was 150.
Pelham is astronomically high. I don't understand. Pelham is suddenly, back when I was in college, it wasn't that big, but it's the same size as Exeter. It's 15,000 people.
Well, there's also the basic economics. There's 4 fields there, right? And then
3.
3, sorry, yeah. And then where else are you going to go? There's 2 at Brentwood, There's one in East Kingston, there's Sawyer Park, but you're paying an arm and a leg for that. So there's scarcity in softball fields. Everybody knows it.
Yeah. And that's where I called all these rec departments, and they are experiencing the exact same thing that Exeter is doing.
Yeah.
And Nashua is being overrun by all these travel teams that are coming in, especially over the Massachusetts border, because it's more expensive in Massachusetts.
Right.
Yeah, there's a ton of overflow.
So, given going into economics, just a quick tangent, how long would these fees be in place for? Like how many years would you review these?
I think it needs to be reviewed at least every 3 years. Yeah. The old thinking was strategic plan was 5 to 10. Throw that model out, because I always harken back to COVID. When you did a strategic plan in 2019, and you're like, oh, I'm doing a 5-year strategic plan.
Right.
Well, COVID just threw that right out the window and lit it on fire. So keeping it 3, and even 3 sometimes may be too long, depending on the economics and how things are exploding in youth sports. And it came down to the common consensus between all the rec departments was there's not enough athletic fields for the demand.
Yeah.
And there never will be. I remember when we expanded the rec park with soccer fields 20 years ago, and we were told, we'll never need more soccer fields. We have enough for all of our teams. Yeah. And now we're in that same situation where, and let's be honest, the town is land poor. We can't pull out land out of nowhere to say, you know what, we're going to build a soccer complex only, or baseball. Like, I think you guys have relied on the SAU facilities for many years, and there's a reason to it. There's no place to build. And if it's flat, and guess what? It's probably in conservation already.
And our costs of just line and field mix, just those things.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at this off the top of my head, I think these rates are for organizations outside the local league. An hour and a half, I'd go $100, boom. Tournaments, $1,000, boom.
And tournaments,
I was suggesting $750 a day.
But I'd go to $1,000 a day.
Yeah, and you'll get it too right now, and it will cover the cost, because I look at the tournament, we had so much rain, and we did not have enough of the dry. I mean, we just couldn't, we had to cancel it, and it stunk for people that came from Vermont.
Just line and field dry has gone up 30%.
Oh, it's crazy.
In the last year.
It's crazy.
So given that at the end of 2004, when the rates are implemented, where would Parks and Rec put the proceeds? To like an additional maintenance person, or just more
materials really to go into the fields, or a contractor? That's a whole other debate we're going to have down the line, where 2 guys cannot sustain. And like, again, it goes back, we've been very fortunate to have 2 solid contractors give us very good rates. What if they decide they don't want to anymore?
Right. What are you going to do?
Right.
We're, as it is, no one else is bidding, because I've had a resident who runs a landscape company tell me, you cannot afford me.
And no one's taking the time to give you a bid.
No, exactly.
You can't even get bids.
They're
too busy.
I talked to a very Caroline actually was there. We talked to a very large landscaping company. You've probably seen their trucks around. And I'm like, when do I need to get information to you to bid on something? He goes, now, for 2024.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't get a bid from you from now for 2024 and try to lock you in, because that's not how it works. I don't even have a budget.
Right.
Yeah, and fuel costs are through the roof.
So Greg, do you feel like you have enough first round discussion from us?
Yes.
To put your policy together that you would like us to then more fine-tooth comb go through next time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Because like, looking at a lot of like Keens and the others, like the nice thing is we don't have to worry about lights. Yeah. Not like we'll ever get there, but we need to raise it. But there's enough where, yeah, we can definitely work on it and come back to you next meeting where here's a draft policy and fees. What do you think?
And I think all of those pieces have an important component. hammering out the tiers and the fees. I mean, the fees, I would rely on you of how much the maintenance and whatnot. If you said 100, great. If you said 150, okay, I'm going to go off you. But I think that for you guys, the allocation process and how you schedule is going to be most important for you guys.
I think an interesting exercise would also be like take a look at what the fees you would charge would be, and then look retroactively how much would we have made this year if we had charged those fees. Because then it's like, oh,
That's an interesting
that
idea.
number's a lot lower than I thought. We need to go up. We actually wouldn't have enough to do what we want to do. So because we know we know who used the fields and what we could have charged them.
And we're not going to lose the teams too, because not only people are in need right now, but we do have the most beautiful facility locally. It really is for the local small towns. It's a beautiful facility, and that's why it's sought after. So people are salivating to come here because we've underpriced it right now. So I think everybody
It's all
may
in
have
one
an
spot.
off
You
for a
have
little
the
bit.
pool in between games.
Absolutely, that's it.
You got parking. It's a gem.
It's beautiful.
So we should.
It's beautiful. The
cost
snack
should-
shack, if we get that open, I mean, that the revenue stream on that to open that, is going to be great.
And you're talking about a fee structure for more than just the rec park, or are you talking about?
Yeah, because that's a whole nother conversation. That's the conversation that needs to go. Like, we have other athletic facilities that, like Brickyard, which we have a pretty good agreement with Seacoast Flag Football right now because they decimated our numbers. So it's either join them or try to go against the tide. And honestly, we make more money renting that field to them than we would have made running it ourselves.
Yeah.
And talking to a colleague from Woodland, Texas, who I saw in January, he goes, you as a Parks and Rec do not need to serve everyone. And you can take a back seat if it is financially solvent for you. And this is one
Or
of
the
them.
need in the community's being met.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And they,
Because that's an affordable league. And
Yeah.
we can't compete with it.
Yeah.
Just in terms of marketing and advertising
Yeah.
alone.
yeah, exactly. And they have a full-time staff that works on it. Just so it made sense. And
Yeah, you're up against the NFL at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, so
Literally.
what I do think is missing from the Keene piece is, like, in Portsmouth, for example, this is how we list out all of our fields and our fees. What I actually think we're missing is a non-resident category.
Yeah.
We're not there yet, but I like how you can see all of the fields and even the indoor spaces we list out, and then like what's the rate. So even like someone who goes online to pull out the application, they have a sense of what they're gonna
Yep.
there, and you could incorporate
Oh,
that
yeah.
in. But I like the idea because that's what I do think is missing from here is a real breakdown
One sheet.
yeah.
of like what is
Yeah.
at first glance what's this going to cost.
And that's where I got that out of a lot of the other proposals too.
Yeah.
Like Londonderry had it and Pelham had it. So it shows like, all right, boom, boom, boom. This is the name of the fields. And it
Yeah.
might be in there, but it's buried, but make it more prominent. Like,
Yeah, they do list their fields with their addresses, but
No, I like that page there.
it's
just
very
like,
clear.
here's the field, here's the fee, here's the tier.
Yeah, and you can, obviously, you could add more, you could, whatever, but I kind of like the grid format.
yep.
And you could be bookmarking for, like, maybe you don't know what you're going to be renting, let's say, the tennis courts at, but in 2 years you might start renting those out for private tournaments or whatever. So you could start putting it just being put to be determined. But then it's all kind of like, okay, this is where we're
working
headed.
document.
This is,
Yeah,
yes,
I think
a
it's a
working
good idea to have people in that document.
Yeah.
And then that way it also lets people know too that are in those organizations to expect that it's going to start the tides for changing and that potentially there may be a little bit of a change in that.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Fair.
Something we did at UNH was every year we had the annual rate increase and it was an automatic 3%. And would have to be voted on for like UNH groups, but for non-UNH groups, every single year it went up 3%. So it was that automatic rate increase so that we were always kind of staying in with maintenance
That would
costs.
fall in Molly's category if that's something the board would want to implement and possibly being a fee.
I mean, it certainly is something that I think we should think about in terms of all of our facilities, and I think that we should have that conversation because I think that there is there is something to just having it done. You know, like, this is what we're gonna do, then we don't have to think about it.
Well, Molly's been on the board long enough where we developed town hall fees prior to COVID. And now what happened since COVID? All the utilities have gone up and everything. And now we're finally investing in that building. We've got new chairs, which are fabulous. Anyone wants to buy the old wooden ones, we still have some for sale.
Good plug.
But at the same time, like, that is so sought after, especially during political season.
Yeah.
Like, we have one that wants to come in for 10 days to book it and just bring candidates in throughout the 10 days, both sides. So it's very fascinating, like what that could generate and what other facilities around town could generate.
Yeah, I will also say having a line, like, you know how some fields or facilities are like, and lights is like an extra line item, having multimedia like this could be a line item too. Like, we've started charging, like, a regular meeting room for us, for example, is normally $25. You want our room that has a big TV that you could Zoom or you could like broadcast your meeting, then it's $50 an hour. So because that's just become a thing, right? Okay, I want to be able to Zoom, and that means that you need to have the microphone out, and we're now having to be the AV person for a meeting, and there's a cost to that.
This is all great. So I will come back to you guys with a written policy.
Thank you, everybody, for your feedback on this.
We'll try to be brief on the rest.
Yeah, super. Just tennis court repair.
Master plan recommendation. We made a recommendation. The things for the master plan for 2024 are, and which was voted on and approved by the planning board the last week. Molly, was it?
I don't serve as the representative anymore.
Planet Playground is still on the docket. We're still working on a purchase and sales, but hopefully we're close. I think we are. And the Park Improvement Fund, which may or may not be up to vote to reword the warrant article, because there's some questions on what we should be spending it on. So I'll fill you in further details. So that's pretty much it for 2024. In the future, we are going to have to look long-term. We got the facilities assessment back for the pool building, and it was tear down.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Pretty much. They're like, within 10 years, the life expectancy is going to be.
It might just fall itself.
So when they everything in on the facility, they're like pour, and pour. We put a lot of Band-Aids and lipstick on it to make it look good. So it does get by, but that's something that's going to have to be on there. Yeah. Which brings us to the next thing, the tennis court repair. We are going to try to do a patch to the severe cracks that have formed in the lower courts. So prior to me being director, we had Vermont Systems put on what's called a right-way patch. It's a fiberglass patch that goes over it and it gets coated over and blah, blah, blah. It's supposed to be the end-all, be-all for cracks. Well, and when you have a winter with no snow and a lot of rain that freezes after, those don't last very well. So we are tasked to, the edges are now starting to curl, which is creating a little tripping hazard. So right now, the select board has approved us to go in and mill it out. I am actually, suddenly there's another sports court company that is available that wants to come look at it before we go to an invasive action of literally going on there with a bobcat and a miller and mill down the pavement, repave it, wait 30 days, resurface it. So we're hoping we'll get some answers, but either way, we might use that second company to come in and recoat it if we go that direction. He hasn't seen it. He's like, I can't tell you sight unseen, but there is a lot of cracks there, about 4,500 linear feet of cracks that need to be resolved. And we've gotten a price on doing it ourselves. But again, 2 guys. Yeah. But they have experience in doing it, which is outstanding, but it's 2 guys. So
In their spare time.
yeah. And then lastly, department budgets were due yesterday. We submitted our budget. Thank you to Molly and the select board, it is something the select board has really put themselves around. They want to give back to the employees to help not only retain them, but also attract, because anyone that goes on the town website, our public works is looking for tons of people to work. That being said, so one of the things that they did a reclassification for the non-union. They've been grade bumps for the union positions. So our budget, without even touching any other line, was already up significantly. So that's going to be a challenge, especially when we keep talking about contracted services versus a full-time employee. We understand that it's not a year to go after full-time employees, so that's another conversation we're going to need to have down the line. Because one thing that to retain employees is also not to burn them out. And the nice things with our current park staff is working less than a 12-hour day to them is a breath of fresh air, because that's what they were used to in the private sector. But at the same time, we don't have an unlimited budget to keep overtime to have them work till 7 o'clock every night to get things done. And I mean, they've done some remarkable things already to save the town, but looking in the future, how do we better position ourselves to maintain it? One of the things I want to reiterate is there is an RSA that protects municipalities for anyone using recreational properties for free. It protects anyone. It protects even private owners if you opened up land and you go ahead and hunt. But just April of 2022, the New Hampshire Supreme Court did kind of do a shot across the bow to those that do it. So there was a woman that went to Newcastle Commons, and there's the fort there, and the fort is actually on state property, not local property. Well, she was next to the wall, and the wall collapsed on her and hurt her. So she sued both the state and the town of Newcastle for damages. The Rockingham court sided with her, like, no, there's an RSA that protects, well, the New Hampshire Supreme Court said, time out. You need to make a deliberate effort to properly maintain said properties or lessen your negligence if you knew something was amiss or something needed to be fixed. So it's kind of putting the pressure back, and this is what, and Molly probably knows this, it's been in the State House a lot. They're trying to push back more liabilities onto the municipalities with some of the things they've thrown at us the last few years. They tried to pass a bill that basically said if you got hurt on a playground, the town and the school districts can be sued, even though you're not supervising it. But that got shot down, and they've been trying to do these little things. So just keep in mind when we look at future facilities and maintaining it, that we have to, if we know, and again, it goes to the long list of deferred maintenance that the Parks Department has had to endure over the last few years. As it continues to grow, if something were to come about and get hurt, I'm afraid that they could open the town up to liability, because we just don't have the capacity to keep up with the aging infrastructure of the parks. So right now in the budget, I have an increase in contracted services to lessen the load on mowing, to try to bridge that gap so my staff can then function to do something. Perfect example, the beautiful fence on Bow Street across from the police station. They're weed whacking, and Scott, my laborer, pushed against one of the posts, and it was cracked 2 inches down. You had a kid climbing on it and didn't know, suddenly that post would have fallen over and hurt that child. They've replaced it since, because that's the granite post is extremely heavy, but that's just one of the things. Playground safety inspections are very important. Doing more frequent inspections. We get reports of reports of like, oh, there's a screw, or this is broken, this is that. Yeah, we fix it as quickly as possible, but at the same time, if we don't know it's there, we can't fix it. So not having the time to do these frequent inspections, if there's a pothole or a runoff that someone can twist, and where if we don't have time to fix it, again, we know it's there. So that's something that this board can discuss for future budgets, but down the line, it needs to be rectified somehow. Somehow, I look at it and I compare it often to other divisions of public works where they have a general foreman, a foreman, and people underneath them. Well, I have a foreman and one person, and contractors. And contractors, again, will just come and mow, and that's it. They're not picking up sticks. Well, they are picking up sticks, but not picking up trash or...
There's not the same buy-in as
Correct.
you would get with an employee.
Yeah, so...
All right. Looks like we touched on new business and old business.
Well,
Anything additional?
new business, murder mystery.
Ah, yes, I saw that the other day. Did you
Yes.
do that?
Yeah, so we just actually got a huge sponsorship today, so Kennebunk Savings Bank
Oh,
is giving
that's
us
great.
a bunch of money, and Building Block Commons is also sponsoring that, but we're still looking for sponsors, so that'd be great, and we're raising money. It's gonna be a murder mystery dinner party, so 3-course meal, buffet style, with like an acting troupe coming in doing a murder mystery, so costumes encouraged, there will be a cash bar.
Which will be coming to you for approval on September 11th.
Yes, yeah. It's
At
going to
the
be really
town
fun.
hall?
At Town Hall.
It's a masquerade, right?
Masquerade, yep. And we're doing a bunch of my high school staff needs volunteer hours, so they're volunteering to do childcare. So childcare, so that's good. So that'll be great, and I'm just really excited. Hopefully we raise some money for youth program scholarships. I did see an increase in like well, I don't know if it was an increase, but we ran out of scholarships for camp and a couple other sports.
If you all need scholarships, especially for needy women, this is a weird thing, but I serve on I'm a trustee of a fund that provides scholarships, and we have too much money. We cannot find people. So like if you have, it's annoying because we keep getting penalized. So if you have, especially single mothers,
There's
Like
one family in particular
send
that
Yeah. And this year, we raised $12,000 in donations for scholarships. So that's 10 campers that are able to go to summer camp free, and then we match their field trips. So, I mean, it gave them the
I still have a
experience,
wait list.
but it wasn't for, and I'll give a shout out, Kiwanis Club, the Used Cars Dealers Association, off the top of my head, trying to think.
There's another women's group of
The women's club.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, you should email me because we can get you more money because we
Okay.
have money that we can't
I would
spend.
love that.
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, but we never turn anyone away from any of our programs. And this year, one of the things with the RUN, if a child qualified for the RUN program, they don't do the whole family, but we will give a family pool pass because we know they're low to moderate income and they need assistance. And Jen actually brought it to my attention. I found it. I wish I had printed it. There was an article in CNN talking about the benefits of public pools and how when you have a hot summer, those low to moderate income families don't have a place to go that is affordable. Because if you parking at the beach is like what, $2-3 an hour now. So it's not like the olden days where you're like, oh, it's 25 cents an hour. Let's go down to the beach. So having that opportunity for them, and we've seen a big uptick in our seniors love our pool as well. So I mean, keeping that in factor is that has to come out of somewhere. So we raise money and we spend it just as quickly. And this is the year that we will be spending down some of the balance of our rec revolving fund. Our rec revolving fund was up to $186,000 coming into 2023. We're using some for match. We obviously don't know what this year will be at the end, but you look at it where we're down $12,000 from the pool revenue. We gave them raises because we want to attract the good employees. And And then we do all these free things. I gotta say the Tune and Fork broke even this year because we went out. Our sponsorship monies are way up there, but we can do more for those less fortunate.
And on that note too, before we finish up, Powder Keg is coming up. So get your tickets or tell people to get their tickets. It is back to the one session again, popularly requested. So it's back to the one session again.
And VIP tickets are selling really fast.
Yeah, so you can get in holding and in a lot sooner than.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. Can I make a request for a report back next meeting?
Sure.
We have an update on your pickleball numbers and any thoughts about permanently making some pickleball courts rather than just having temporary nets.
That's going to be a big CIP, and that's where eventually we will, depending on how this year ends, come back to you for a recommendation to move forward to do the town recreation master plan, and having someone come in here and basically lay it out for us for the next 5 years to complement the town's master plan. So real quick, but pickleball was very successful. We were able to open it up to more people. We didn't see the numbers showing up daily as we had in the past because you have courts, they have courts, everyone has courts now, and they're more, yeah. So that is lessening the burden on Exeter. We started a pickup tennis program, which exploded to 80 plus people. Tennis in the parks sold out every single one.
Huge wait list.
Yeah, we're actually using the high school courts this fall because of the renovation to our courts. So Coach Ball and Rusty were like, yep, put in an application so at least we can relocate it because we've canceled all programming up there. So we will have 2 tennis courts and 2 pickleball courts always open that people can go up and play, but we're asking them to be polite. So yeah, the numbers were definitely there. I think we're going to be adjusting the fees and adjusting the different way we do things, because I think we have the group that likes to do the mornings, we have a group that likes to do Tuesdays, and we have a group that are adaptive and newbies that like to do Thursdays. So we might separate them into 3 separate programs.
Learning summer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it's the tennis, I think, has a big potential to grow even more.
Yeah, we found that as well in Portsmouth. It has exploded after a bit of a lull.
The tennis.
Tennis. So pickleball is raging like a wildfire.
Oh, yeah.
There's no
I
stopping
know.
it. However, I think that created a counterpoint to tennis. And people all of a sudden were like, no, I prefer tennis. And so we're echoing Exeter in that everything that we touched with tennis this year was just never enough. But that's new.
Yeah, this year, this is the first, but it's great. We were there for the Lollipop Festival, and so we had the 500 people for Lollipop Festival. Every single court, like the lower courts were our pickup tennis. There were probably 16 to 20 people on the lower courts playing tennis. There were tennis lessons on the upper courts. There were 4 people playing pickleball on the semi-permanent nets, which have been a big hit. Some people complained about moving them sometimes, but I'm like, we're asking just but I mean, it worked well, and we're going to work with both groups of volunteers to continue to coexist. I just actually had a nice donation of windscreens to us that were destined for the garbage. So I'll take them. They're in great condition. So we're tweaking in, again, maintenance.
Yeah. And then can I just make one more other, we've been celebrating our amazing rec team. Caroline, do you want to share what you do in your free time at UNH? And teach an amazing class.
I teach festival and event planning, so day 1 is tomorrow. So it'll be exciting. Yeah, I don't know what I did. I'm getting married in a few weeks too, so I'm teaching, getting married, going on honeymoon. It'll be fine.
I find
it's
that we're very lucky to have, she's a professor at UNH as well as working on our rec team. I mean, it just makes us feel all the more confident that we have the right people in the job working so hard. This looks like a tiny agenda, but it was just so robust. And so thank you guys. And to put a budget together after like a summer, like where you have all this extra summer work, and you're like, oh, I'm going to run to the field and I'm going to crush some numbers today. So that's a lot.
And I have one quick thing off the record. Spoke of RUN. Kristen LaFleur is kind of important in that, and her husband Rick is having some health problems right now. But if anybody knows the LaFleurs, please reach out.
I didn't know that. Thank you for that update. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know him, but I do know Kristen. Okay, we'll talk after.
Yeah. Thank you. I talked to her the other day.
Yeah, I keep in touch. Good people. They do a lot for the town.
Very, very good family. Very good family. All right, guys. No other new business, old business? We are good. Thank you for all the feedback. I really appreciate it. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second.
You
can second.
You can second.
Meeting adjourned. You can second next time. Okay.
22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.